So this is awesome. Hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. My name is Dominique, and I'm a part of the Black Tech Saturdays team. And thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to join us for another session within our Black Tech Saturdays virtual AI series. So just to give you a nice little overview, high overview of this series, it was really created with everybody in mind, especially you. And the reason why is because we wanted to make sure that AI learning or is accessible, it's practical, and it's relevant for founders, professionals, and innovators who really want to work smarter and scale faster. And so today's workshop that we have is navigating the legal frontier, responsible AI for startups. And so David J. Thomas, who is a partner at, I am not going to mispronounce this, Honigman. Is that how you pronounce that?
That's right.
Hey, I did it. Okay, yes,
You're
he is here.
lucky. You're lucky. The name used to be Honigman Miller Schwartz and Cohn, so they
Oh my,
they trimmed it a couple years ago.
oh my gosh. Well, yes, we have David here who is going to walk us through so many amazing things when it comes to, just the legal frontier and working with AI and how it can support document organization, issue spotting, navigating data privacy and compliance, and much more. So we're really, really excited to have you all here. Go ahead, make sure you have open ears, open mind, take copious notes. You have this amazing resource with you today. And I'm just going to pass it right over to David so we can go ahead and get started.
Well, thanks, Dominique. Gonna share my screen, get the slides up. So like she said, this is really, treated as like a AI 101 for the law. And it wouldn't be a legal presentation if I didn't have a disclaimer. So we'll start there. Um, my name is David. I'm a patent attorney. I'm a partner at the Honigman law firm. We're in Detroit. Our offices are right above the roasting plant in Campus Martius. I've been at Honigman for about 8 years. And like I said, as a patent attorney, I'm working with innovators and startups and technology companies every day. So I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. And this presentation is just kind of general information purposes. It's not supposed to be treated as legal advice. Um, but I'm hoping it can be really helpful, and I can share some of my insights and things that I've seen from some of our clients to hopefully make life easier for all of you guys. So my first BTS event was about 2 years ago. I have a friend and client who's pretty heavily involved with the organization, and it's been really great to see the growth and the excitement surrounding this organization. I know it's done a lot of good in the city, and I'm excited to see where it continues to go. So when Dominique reached out about this presentation, I said, "Are you asking me to have people replace me with AI? Is that what the goal is here?" And I said, "I'm not comfortable doing that, but I am comfortable helping them navigate the framework. So this is not me teaching you how to use AI to be a lawyer. This is me teaching you how startups and small businesses can responsibly use AI with human oversight, including oversight from legal counsel." So think of this as AI literacy for legal issues, not how to replace lawyers with AI. So the biggest thing that we see as lawyers, and really in any aspect, is there's such low barriers to entry in AI. You just download an app or you visit a website, you can instantly create a photo document, whatever you're looking for, in seconds. And so it's easy to think, oh, that's a great piece of information. I'm just going to run with that. But there are a lot of risks with that. And so let me start by asking, and feel free to use the emojis or hands up or whatever, who is using AI in their workplace or personally today? So who feels confident that they understand all the legal risks associated with that? All right, Eric, we'll test that knowledge. um, so that's a key gap between using AI and understanding AI, and that's where we often see startups get blindsided. So I think the first thing to understand is that AI has a lot of strengths and AI has a lot of weaknesses. So what can AI do really well? It can help you work faster. Um, it can help you draft materials, and those kind of go hand in hand. So if you have a lot of things you need to do in a short amount of time, AI is really good at that. Organizing documents, we do this all the time on the legal side. We constantly are using AI. If we have, so I'm in patent law. If we have a 200-page patent that we need to review, but we're just looking for one specific piece of information, we can feed it into an AI tool and say, tell me where this is. It's great at doing something like that. Brainstorming. And I use brainstorming intentionally because it's not the execution of the ideas that AI is great at. It's the brainstorming of the ideas. So if you ask AI a prompt and say, give me a few ideas on this particular topic, and then you sift through them and determine which is best and how to execute it, that's a really good way to use AI. Model business scenarios, and it's not just business, but modeling just in general. Like you see it all the time. There's so many use cases from medicine to business to safety, whatever it is. AI does a great job of kind of projecting everything. So, before I go any further, I want this to be engaging and interactive. I don't want to just sit here and talk at you guys for an hour. I don't think that's helpful for anybody. So feel free to use the chat. Feel free to, turn your mic on, interrupt me, ask questions. Um, like I said, I have a lot of knowledge in this space, but I want to make sure the knowledge I'm providing is what you guys are interested in. So feel free to speak up if you have any questions. So we talked a little bit about the strengths. What are the weaknesses? Data privacy is probably the biggest that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. We'll get into more specifics, but essentially an AI tool um, doesn't do a great job of keeping your data private unless you have safeguards in place. Intellectual property creates a lot of questions. So if you're an inventor or you're a small business owner and you're trying to invent something and you use AI, who's the inventor? Can you patent that idea? Those are types of gray areas that come up with AI. Confidentiality kind of goes hand in hand with data privacy. You want to make sure anything you're submitting to AI isn't confidential. The laws are rapidly changing, and there's a lot of regulatory compliance that's coming into play. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's changing so quickly, it's hard to keep up. And then the last thing is accuracy, and if you guys are familiar with hallucinations. So if you enter a prompt into a generative AI tool, it may spit out something that just doesn't exist. It doesn't make sense. Or if you ask it to create an image, you may see a person having six fingers on one hand or something like that. It can get a little wild. So that's why it's important to kind of have this oversight. So the goal of this talk is to kind of close that gap between using AI and using AI responsibly. So it's supposed to give you the awareness to avoid unnecessary risks and mistakes. So I like to think of using AI, particularly generative AI, as like building a house. So you could theoretically enter a prompt into an AI tool and say, here's the site plan. I want a house, 3 bedroom, 3 bath, draw up a blueprint. And it certainly could. It could tell you all the tools and materials you need, the steps for building a house. And even if you didn't have any experience in building a house, you probably could put together something with a foundation, 4 walls, and a roof. Um, but there are so many things that AI can't account for if it doesn't know about. And the only way it would know about it is if it was on site, touching the soil, understanding the climate, the temperature that it's building in. And even though you may have a standing house at the end of that whole project, there are cracks in the foundation that could show up much later on. And some of those may not be curable. So think of the same thing for your company. Yes, you can draft all your corporate governance documents, all your agreements, all your contracts using AI, but you don't really know what those cracks are unless you had legal oversight or human oversight. So it may hold up for a while. Your company may kind of plug along and everything is fine, but there will come a time when one of those agreements gets challenged or things become uncertain, and then you need to kind of scramble. And some of those defects and cracks in the foundation may not be curable without a significant rebuild. So I'm just further driving home the point that lawyers are important. Um, and I'm not saying that just because I'm a lawyer. I would say the same thing if I was talking about a doctor. I wouldn't want you to self-diagnose. You should go see a doctor. You should go see a general contractor if you're trying to build something. I'm just saying there are specialties that AI can't account for and replace, at least not yet. So let's talk a little bit about the legal landscape of AI. Um, so there is a host of AI specific regulations that are either already implemented or are being implemented. So the first and kind of most comprehensive was the European EU AI Act. I think this was implemented about 2 years ago. And it basically just set forth a framework for how companies need to implement AI, mostly in a way to protect the consumers. Um, Executive orders in the US, uh, even going back to the Biden administration, there have been a few executive orders, and I know there have been a few proposed from the current administration. So the problem with AI and the legislation is that AI moves so quickly, it's difficult for Congress to kind of react because they're not that nimble. So the perceived solution to that is issuing executive orders, which can kind of cut through all that red tape. State level privacy laws you need to be aware of, and then the FTC, which is really a consumer protection agency. It's designed to protect the individual consumer from how companies operate. So they have some strict guidelines on warning companies not to overstate their AI capabilities or mislead consumers. So that would apply to small businesses as well. So if you advertise on your website, we're using AI to do this, we're using AI to do that, you need to be careful you're not overstepping and coming into violation of any FTC rules.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
S- Say you have a say you have a website, right? Was stating that you are using AI, would that, generally speaking, would that help or hurt the business?
I think the only thing on the FTC I would say is to make sure it's accurate. So if you are using AI
Mhm.
and it's a benefit to the industry that you're in, and you can accurately do so, then I don't really see much downside. It's really the overstating that people get in trouble for.
Mm.
So a common example is if anybody's familiar with like Microsoft Pilot or Chat GPT, like some of these very widely available tools, companies say we leverage AI to do XYZ, when really all they're doing is they plug in a simple prompt to Chat GPT every now and then, you know. So it's just make sure you're accurate on whatever you're characterizing, and that's not just for AI use. That's really for anything, on the FTC side for sure.
Thank you.
Yep. So data privacy is really one of the biggest problems we run into. We being the lawyers, we see this all the time. Say a company A is working with a set of clients. Those clients have confidential data, and the employees now plug in that confidential data into an AI tool, an open source, publicly available AI tool, and say, hey, review this contract. Tell me, tell me if there are any concerns or pitfalls or anything like that. Well, what they've just done is essentially email blast out into the public this client's confidential data. So unless you have specific safeguards up on an AI tool, and my understanding, the only way to do that is if you had like a AI tool built for your company, or some type of vendor agreement where there are safeguards in place. You need to be really careful about what you're entering into an AI model. So many startups that I know, and not even just startups, some established companies who don't have sufficient data privacy policies in place, they really commit privacy violations simply by copying and pasting customer data into a chatbot. Is there a question?
Yeah, I have a question. This is it. Absolutely, I agree. You should not be uploading contracts and telling some of your most confidential information. What my question is, there is a very thin line between sharing information yet being confidential. A lot of times we will hear someone say, "Hey, the AI, it needs to know who you are so it can tailor the messaging around you." Like a lot of people are always saying, you need to teach AI about you. But then we also have this in the same breath, we're hearing, "Oh, you have to make sure you're not feeding it sensitive data." So, from your expertise, what would you say are like some big no-nos that people should not share outside of, like, I know hopefully people know not to share social security number, address, things of that sort. But like, do you have any top of mind, like top three big no-nos that you shouldn't share when it comes to having your data in the AI when you are using it to help you brainstorm or come up with ideas in a sort?
Yeah. So I think there are a few. I would say the first and the most important is what I've kind of been talking about generally, which is customer information. So if you have a client or a customer and it's their document, their data, their information, I wouldn't even take the risk of assuming it's public or private. Just assume it's private. It's not your information. And if you start treating someone else's information as public, that's when you really start to get in trouble. So I would just, as kind of, and we'll get into this once we get into the, um, you know, responsible policies that you can implement at your company, is just make it a broad rule. Just never insert customer data. Internal financials, I think, is really sensitive. Um, you don't want anything related to your internal financials to make it into an AI model. And that's kind of towing the line that you're talking about, Dominique, where you say, I want the AI to understand who we are, what our company is, and our value, so it can recommend an approach. But you can do that generically. You don't need to input like, here's our profit and losses statement. tell me where we should go from here. And then the last, as a patent attorney, there can be significant ramifications if you publicly disclose an invention before you file a patent application on it. So in some instances, if you disclose an invention,
Mm-hmm.
you can no longer get a patent on it.
What?
So
Oh my goodness.
so that's just kind of a general,
Wow.
recommendation, and not even just AI model. Like if you're just speaking with a friend or an associate, whether you're at Black Tech Saturdays or Tech Town or wherever you're at, if you're talking with somebody, you certainly want to make sure you're not disclosing any confidential invention information.
Oh wow. I did not know that you couldn't do a patent if you put it into AI. See, that's one of those nuances that we wouldn't have known, if we're not too, if we're not mindful of what we're putting into AI. That's new information. So thank you.
I would say AI is moving, like I said, it's moving so quickly, and the courts and the legislation are still slow to catch up. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule that you're precluded from filing a patent application, but it's such a risk that it's not worth taking that risk at this point.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Um, okay. So yeah, kind of continuing with the intellectual property conversation. Um, a lot of these questions, candidly, are not completely answered. So we have a broad framework that was put in place decades ago. We haven't, at least in the US, we don't have an updated framework specifically to address AI content. So we're trying to shoehorn the current AI world into an old world pre-AI. That is almost certainly going to change because the law will need to update. But these questions, who owns AI generated content? Um, it's a bit blurry, and I think the current thinking is if it's not human generated, it's extremely difficult to protect. That doesn't mean impossible. So if you have human contribution, significant human contribution with minimal AI contribution, that's on the spectrum of whether it could be protected. That's probably more likely. But it ultimately is a question that remains, unclear based on the current guidance. Same thing with code. So, I mean, we have clients all the time who tell us, they've essentially cut their software development group in half because they can just generate code through ChatGPT or another model. But then the question becomes, well, can you copyright that? And again, it's a bit murky, but unless there's significant human contribution, the answer is probably no. Um, I actually have a few examples on the patent side of things, so I'll hold off on that. But the biggest thing to know is that once you get into AI and intellectual property, it starts to get really confusing, and which is why it's helpful to bring in someone like myself or another intellectual property attorney who can kind of answer these things because it changes almost daily.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I have another
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, Eric.
On the intellectual property part, are there any current standards or laws that qualifies what substantial or significant human contribution is when it comes to anything that's being developed with the help of AI? Like how
Yes.
much? Because I know with let's say academic papers, for instance, they 10% is like the allowable amount of AI contribution or AI involvement for it to still be a submittable work. I don't know if there is anything that's in the general public that's standardizing like substantial human work?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll jump ahead um, because I actually have a slide on that. So this is like I referenced it earlier. PANU is a court decision from a few years ago that was really pre AI revolution, I'll call it. And so these are three factors that PANU sets out to answer your exact question, Eric. So the first is that the inventor of a patent, so we're talking about the patent side of things now, it must the patent must contribute or the inventor must contribute in some significant manner to the conception of the claimed invention. So conception is a legal term. It's coming up with the idea. So if you have a general thought of like, hey, I want to invent something in the bicycle space, but I don't know what, and you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, invent a new bicycle for me, that clearly would not be you coming up with a new idea. You'd be relying on AI. But it's a spectrum, like I said, so it starts to become a little murkier if you go, all right, I want a new bike that has three wheels. It's an e-bike. It's designed for the elderly. I want it to be safe. Here's kind of the framework. AI, can you put that together for me? This is where us lawyers make our money. We'll argue about what is a significant contribution. So it's intentionally vague so that it can be fought about later. But it's really just this must contribute in a significant manner. It cannot be insignificant in quality, and you have to contribute more than what is well known. So there has to be, that's kind of the definition of an invention, is it has to be like new and non-obvious. And so if AI is providing that newness, I'll call it, it's likely that a human would not be the inventor. And the ramifications for that is under current US law, the only people that can be inventors are humans. So if you don't have a human inventor, you can't get a patent.
I have a question, David. Has, or just like, have you experienced where AI has given um a user or an inventor, have they given an inventor someone else's invention before? Have you experienced that at all? I was just curious.
Where, sorry, can you say that
So,
again?
so for example, if we have an inventor who put something in AI, it was like, hey, help me come up with this idea, and then AI generates something and it gives it someone else's idea. Have you experienced
Uh,
that from your lens?
no, but that's kind of like the worst case scenario when we talk
Yeah.
about data privacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are entering in a new invention to ChatGPT, that's now part of that model, and it can generate that for somebody else.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't seen or heard or read about that.
Okay.
But I will say it's a very possible scenario, and one that I bet as AI continues to grow and evolve, it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like our worst nightmare. So hopefully,
Absolutely, because that's
yeah,
gonna yeah, that would definitely be a worst nightmare. I was just curious, like, ooh, I wonder if that's happened before. But like you said, as things grow,
right,
the likelihood may increase. So
for
yeah.
sure, for sure. All right, let's jump back. Okay, so like I said at the start, there's a lot of things AI can do really well. And I get lawyers are expensive. They can be time consuming. Not everybody has immediate access to a lawyer, or, as a startup, maybe you have resources allocated elsewhere. But I would say these are some kind of safe things that AI would be comfortable doing without kind of crossing into the legal realm. So document sorting in organization. So you can kind of categorize contracts, break them down, understand them a little bit better. It can summarize long PDFs. It does a great job of extracting information. So like I said before, if I'm reviewing a patent and I need to find one specific piece of information, it can read it really quickly and then pull out what I'm looking for. Another thing it can do really well, and you can think of it as like pre-work to a lawyer, is it can flag questions for a lawyer. So if you're engaging with a vendor or a supplier and they send you a contract, I would never recommend, signing that contract without having a lawyer look at it. But what you can potentially do, and again, assuming all data privacy rules are followed and everything, you can have it review that contract and say, tell me if there are any issues here. Tell me if this is, covering this specific type of scenario. And then it will pull out red flags, and then you can go talk to your lawyer about it. And that will just kind of cut through the beginning phases of that conversation with your lawyer and really get to the heart of what you need to talk about. And I'll tell you from the legal side of things, as us lawyers, we use AI to do things like that all the time. We use it as a kind of a second set of eyes or a backstop. So like I'll review a document, come up with my independent thoughts, and then I'll send it to AI and say, tell me what you think. And I'll kind of double check to make sure I thought of everything or if there was something I missed. So lawyers are already doing that, pretty much every lawyer, because the AI revolution is coming and people don't want to be left behind, but it can't hurt for you to do some of that work before meeting with a lawyer. It's great at creating first drafts of things, especially internal materials. So again, this is something where you can draft up an HR policy, a job description, some type of marketing materials, whatever it is, and then have some human oversight. So whether your HR manager looks at something or your marketing director looks at something, it's a great way to start, but I would never recommend executing without any human oversight. So I think from the legal side, the main takeaway would be never let AI write something that becomes legally binding, unless you have a lawyer take a look at it first. Research and idea generation is typically pretty fine. So that would be, market research summaries, competitive analyses. If you're looking at, other businesses, how are they doing things? How do you stack up compared to them? Business planning drafts, industry benchmarks, anything that's kind of data driven can be really helpful. And then going back to the issue spotting, that can be great, before meeting with a lawyer or anything like that. So we've talked a little bit about the key risks and pitfalls. So again, the biggest thing and like the worst nightmare is that somebody's confidential information gets submitted to an AI model and then it makes its way into somebody else's hands. Like Dominique was asking, I'm not aware of any specific instances of that happening, but anytime you upload something to an AI model, it almost certainly is being used in future responses. So ask yourself, would I email this information to a stranger? That stranger being AI. And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't upload it to AI. We briefly talked about hallucinations, but it's kind of become, I don't want to say a joke in the legal world because it's kind of scary, but lawyers have gotten into trouble because they ask ChatGPT to write a paper that they're going to file with the court, and ChatGPT will literally make up cases. So the paper will cite to a case that doesn't exist. And because the lawyer didn't review it and verify the accuracy before submitting it to the court, it's basically treated as like lying to the court. And so it can be a really big problem from the legal side. So if that's what's happening in law, it also applies to any other area of business. So just be careful. Everything should be like a trust but verify approach. IP ownership, there's a lot of, gray areas, things that are uncertain, things that change day to day. The law is rapidly changing, so it's important to have lawyers take a look at that before you take any significant strategy related to IP. Unauthorized practice of law is a bit of an interesting one, because if you have AI generate a contract or review a contract for you, and then it makes a mistake, and now you're in court because of that mistake, who's responsible? Is it the AI company that made the model? No, ultimately, it's you. I mean, the current thinking is that whoever is in control of that document is responsible for whatever goes into that document, regardless of whether it was using AI to assist with it. So again, not all the time, not every single thing you do, but very key moments, legally binding contracts, corporate governance documents, intellectual property. Those are key areas where lawyers should certainly get involved. The last one is there have been some reports about certain bias and unfairness related to models. So models necessarily spit out whatever they're trained on. And so if there are certain biases or unfairness potentially towards minorities or women or low income individuals, whatever it may be, if it's trained on materials that indicates that type of view of the world, then it will spit out unfair and biased information. So it can really lead to regulatory penalties, reputational harm, ethical issues. So it's just something to keep in mind, that AI is not, it's not perfect. It's not ideal. It has issues. It has errors. You can't always trust it. So we've talked a lot about kind of the good things and the bad things. This is where you, as small business owners, entrepreneurs, startups, whatever your current situation is, this is where you can really protect yourself. So every company, I don't care how big, if you're using AI, you should have a responsible AI policy. It doesn't need to be a 20-page document. It doesn't need to be, overly oppressive. Even if it's just one page for any of your employees to sign and acknowledge. And these are some of the key things that should be included. So again, what's the type of data that the employees are allowed to input? If you have an AI tool that you're contracted with, do you have safeguards in place? Like I said, no customer info, no financial info, no intellectual property. Those are kind of the three key ones that you shouldn't be including. An acknowledgement that humans or your employees are going to review all AI output can go a long way. Just to keep it on the policy and protect you as a business owner, to say, I don't want my employees just outputting AI and sending it to somebody. It can really protect you as the owner. The vendor due diligence relates to, so if you contract with OpenAI or some of these other AI companies, you want to understand what they're doing with your data. So that's something where you'll want a lawyer to come in to analyze the contracts and understand what are they doing with your data? Are they sharing it? Are they using it to train their models? Are they using it to train other models? What security measures do they have in place? Um, us lawyers, we have, I think, three, at least at my firm, three AI tools at our disposal, and they're all closed systems. So we can put in, with client consent, we can put in client data and know that it won't go out into the public. So there are ways to put up safeguards. You just need to make sure you're kind of following through with that. And then again, not every task, but there are a few key ones. I think contracts, fundraising, IP strategy, privacy policies, major data decisions. Those are types of things that you'll certainly want to engage a lawyer on. And like I said, I'm local. I'm happy to meet with anybody that has any questions or refer anybody. So if you don't know any lawyers or you're kind of intimidated by the legal world, just give me a call and I'm happy to kind of talk through anything you guys have. See, there's a few things in the chat. Okay, great. So like I said, I'm a patent attorney, which is a kind of legal requirement, legal standard. So I've passed the Michigan State Bar as well as the patent bar. My background is in mechanical engineering. So to say patent attorney, it means I'm a registered patent attorney. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time, and Eric, I'm glad you asked this question because it's very interesting. And I've had clients come up to me all the time where they have come up with a new tool that they use internally, and their engineers say, "Hey, we've created this workflow that implements AI. Can we get a patent on it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's see what it is." And ultimately, what it is they're kind of setting everything up until it gets to AI, and then AI does everything, and then it spits out a result. And in a situation like that, there's really nothing new there. All the new components are being contributed by AI. So it's difficult to get a patent on something like that. But if you had, something new and then it's optimized by using AI, or the AI, analyzes a large amount of data to reach a conclusion for this new idea, then that's way more likely to be a patentable idea. So there are two examples here. I think these may have been too easy for you guys, but we'll go through them. So somebody says, I want to make a new chair. I think there's a market for it, but I don't really know what I want to do. And they just put into the AI tool, create an original design for an office chair. AI spits out a chair, maybe it makes an image, and this person goes, "Great, I've never seen this before. This looks brand new to me. I'm going to go file a patent application on it." Well, if the patent office asks who invented this, person says, "Well, AI did," then under the current regulations, they wouldn't be entitled to it because the inventor is not human. The inventor is the AI. Now, what if they said, "All right, I loved the 70s and 80s. I want to bring back beanbag chairs. I want it as an office chair, though. I want the rigidity of the office chair with the cushion of a beanbag chair. I've got this idea. I created a sketch. All I need now is the armrests." And it says to AI, "Hey, here's my sketch. Here's my idea. I've never seen it before. I think it's a great idea. Give me a few ideas for an armrest." AI spits out a few results. Maybe it is a great brainstorming session, and then the person selects from one of those options. This is a much better case for that person being an inventor. They conceived of the idea of combining two different things, a beanbag chair and an office chair. But it's just kind of the finer points, the minor details, going back to, what is a significant contribution. If there's some of those other insignificant portions are provided by AI, then it's likely that this would be a patentable idea. Well, I think we are right on schedule here, Dominique. I didn't plan that, but I'm available for questions if anybody has any questions.
Oh my, no questions, huh?
Already got all of mine out of the way.
You- Right. No, listen, that this is awesome. I mean, we have this resource literally right here on the call. If you're a founder or a business owner, or you're an inventor, like this is the perfect time to ask questions, especially just in this time, right? Red
So
has a
yeah,
question for you. He said, so I basically need a closed loop model in order to feel safe.
yeah, Red. Essentially, I think that's, a good starting point. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into what constitutes a closed loop model and all of that, but that's where the vendor due diligence and speaking with whoever is giving your company that model, and then having your lawyers kind of review that, that's where you would feel the most safe for sure. But yeah, that's a great starting point, is at a bare minimum a closed loop system or something like that. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think there are also ways to start with a system that's maybe open, but then the data you input isn't used for future modeling. So that may be a way to kind of limit the data that you're entering. So again, that will just talk with, the vendor that is creating the model. Here's a question from Carla. So yeah, I started as a mechanical engineer. That was my undergraduate degree, and then I went to law school at Wayne State. I went to undergrad at Michigan State. So um, after a few internships as an engineer, I realized I didn't want to do it, and then I became a so
After
yeah,
all 4 years, huh, Dave? He was like,
yep.
yeah,
I
that's
said what?
fair.
I said
Gotta
4 years. I'll do another 3 years of law school. That's good enough. Yeah.
pay.
Yeah, Carla, maybe this is your sign.
See, no, that's so cool.
Yeah.
No, this was awesome. And thank you so much, David, because first off, everybody, let's give David a round of applause for the amazing work and insight that he gave us. Because this is going to help us. This is literally going to help us as we continue to navigate through this, us being in the era of AI. Oh, you have another question. Okay. Oh, you got a loaded question here, David. It's from Red. Um, he said, what about logos, script treatments, drafts, new concepts? I shouldn't input those or ask AI for help with those, even if I have maybe ongoing copyright.
Yeah, Red, if it's like an open source AI tool, I would have some real concerns about that. If you are asking it to generate something, so I think that's kind of what your question is, new concepts, that should be fine. So if you say, here's a very simple example, like, hey, I'm trying to write a script to transition data from this database to another, whatever the goal is, and it generates that script for you, that's probably fine. But that whatever that script that's generated is likely not protectable under the copyright law. So as long as you're fine having something generated by AI that isn't copyrightable, then that's really no problem. But the concern is if you have drafted a script, and you say, hey, I came up with this code or this script, let me input it into AI and ask for feedback, then that starts to become a little problematic because you don't know where that data is going. You don't know if the AI is going to use that as part of its model and then spit that out to somebody else. And if it's a very valuable piece of code or script to you, you want to make sure that's protected.
No, that was great. Even Carla said that was amazing. Going to start drafting an AI policy for my company. I agree. That was a you gave us some gems, but I think that was like the biggest gem for me. I was like, that's really smart, especially if you're a founder or you own a business and you want to make sure that everybody is using AI responsibly. And making sure we're doing things according in a lawful manner. So that's actually pretty smart, especially because we may think, oh, we assume everybody is going to do the right thing and everybody's going to review it, but it's like, no, let's actually document that and make sure everybody is aligned and understand exactly that we have to be responsible users. Um, we have another question. It's from Red. He says he's a creative. He means screenplay, scripts, or books, and everything I input would be already originally from me, but I want to make AI, or he want to use AI to make quick edits or inspire changes.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to Eric's question, right? I think if you're talking about whether AI can tweak something you originally came up with and it still is copyrightable, probably. That's such a lawyer answer, but yeah, it's probable that it would be. But if you had AI write a screenplay from scratch and then you tried to file that copyright at the patent and trade at the copyright office, that's where you may run into some issues. But again, it all comes down to your data and what you want to do with it. So if you would put the screenplay onto a public forum and say, hey, I'm soliciting feedback for this screenplay. Anybody out there in the world, let me know what you think, and you're comfortable with that, then I think it's fine putting it into AI because I would view those two things as the same. Think of it as a public broadcast, even though it may feel very private.
I have one more question. I think this could go for those, especially if we do you think that the good old traditional way is still works where they're like, hey, if you have an idea, make sure you write it down and either use snail mail or send it to yourself via, the post office or even email it to yourself. Do you think that's still a good way to kind of protect ideas or the sort when you first come up with a creation? Do you think that's still a good method to follow from your expertise?
Um, are you talking about something creative or something that would be potentially the subject of a patent?
Uh, Potentially something that could be if someone wants to patent something and they haven't been able to like come to you yet or be able to,
So
fill
you're
out the
saying,
paperwork. Is that still a good traditional way of doing things, of sending it to yourself first to kind of like timestamp it?
right. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So about 10 years ago, the US underwent a pretty significant change to the patent law where that no longer is a good strategy. So
Oh,
in the past, and I believe this is what you're referring to, if you came up with an invention and you had proof that you came up with it as of a certain date, and then somebody else filed a patent application on it, uh, depending on kind of other circumstances, you could potentially prove that you are the actual inventor of that, regardless of whether they came up with it independently. Now, the current law is whoever files first, unless it's stolen. So you can't steal inventions, but if two
yeah.
people come up with the same invention at about the same time, but one person files their patent application first, then they're entitled
Mhm.
to the patent.
Oh my.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, see, I'm outdated. I need to thank you.
Well,
I
not
did
many
not know that.
people, yeah, not many people stay up to date on the U.S. patent laws, so that's all good.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay, we are at 12:59. David, could you just one last time? I know we just got to this slide. How can we stay connected with you?
Yeah, like I said, I'm in Detroit. I try to make it to more and more BTS events. Like I said, I've got a good friend and client who's heavily involved. I was at the Digital Empowerment Summit, gave a talk there, so I'm around. I would like to, I would like you guys to feel comfortable to reach out to me, even if it's not like, hey, can I hire you as a lawyer? If it's just, hey, I've got a quick question, or do you know any lawyers I can talk to? Or I'm always happy just to have a conversation, meet for coffee. I'm downtown all the time. So here's my email. If you look me up on our website, feel free to give me a call. We can connect on LinkedIn. um, Really, I love the BTS. I love what it's building. I'm happy to be a very small resource in this large organization, so happy to help in any way I can, and don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like you're bothering me if you want to reach out and chat.
Perfect. Listen, and we love you back, David. We thank you so much for, sharing your time and the resources and the knowledge, and also everybody that is at the workshop. We love and appreciate you all too. Thank you so much for joining today. And again, a big thank you to David for talking about the legalities of AI and even giving us recommendations of how we could think of things in the future for protecting ourselves. Before we wrap up, just two quick reminders. The first thing is that our next workshop in the BTS Virtual AI series is this Tuesday from 12 to 1. The session is going to be, well, the workshop is titled Team Training Elevated AI for Upskilling and Learning at Scale. And it's going to be with Tamara Allen. You can find the registration link in our BTS newsletter as well as across all of our social platforms. And then the second reminder is that we are inviting participants to join the BTS Virtual AI Series Showcase. So that means if you have attended any of our workshops and you want to share what you've learned in those workshops, whatever you've learned, built, or even explored with AI, make sure you're signing up for that. We would love to have you show our BTS community what you've learned and what you've built thus far. So make sure you check your email for that link if you want to submit your interest. It actually should be in your inbox right now. It may even be in your promotions folder, but it's from Black Tech Saturdays. But as always, just to let you all know that today's recording, it will be available next week. It'll be on the blacktechsaturdays.com website and it'll be under the resources tab. Okay, so you can come back to this powerful workshop and be able to review it again, listen, and of course, you may even generate some other questions. But nevertheless, again, thank you so much for pouring into yourselves and spending a part of your afternoon with us. If you celebrate, happy holidays, have a great rest of the weekend, and we hope to see you on Tuesday. So that's all we got. All
All
right,
right, thanks
y'all.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.